Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. Hey, it's Tom Dutta here, your host, and boy, we're going to have an incredible conversation today. This is the Quiet Warrior Show where we have real, authentic conversations with heroic people, and I'm going to bring her out of the green room in a minute, our guest. But I also want to tell you that we're live streaming today across Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so you can communicate and chat with us in the studio. This will be produced into a future YouTube premiere video and an international podcast. So give us a subscribe there on YouTube if you're watching on that source, so we can promote the episode and do more of these. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to my guest. I'm going to bring her out of the green room, Tia Graham. Tia, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. First of all, love your smile, love your happiness. There's a bit of a theme going on here. And you're a fellow Canadian. It's always a pleasure. You live in Kelowna, British Columbia, or at least that's your residence. And also, we have one common thread as well. We share a common publisher, Morgan Publishing. So a little shout out to that, because I'm going to talk about your wonderful new book. So welcome to the show. Can I tell people a little bit about you before we get rolling?
Yes, of course.
I usually do this before I bring the guests on, because some guests say, well, I don't want you reading my bio. It's kind of embarrassing, but I wanted to see what happiness looks like when I brag about you. So everybody watch Tia's face. She's got this authentic smile. So she's an international speaker, best-selling author, and consults on positive psychology and employee morale. She's worked in dozens of companies globally, Hilton Hotels, Hewlett-Packard. And this whole thing about elevating employee engagement, I think, is definitely a relevant topic, especially in the world we live in today. She has founded a company called Arrive at Happy, and that's really what got my attention. And she has led teams over 14 years at luxury hotels in the U.S. and Europe. In fact, in her book, I started reading about Hawaii, and I was jealous. She has multiple certifications in neuroscience, positive psychology, and wow, there's just so much depth. What I'm really interested in exploring with you is the journey through life and through to why you're doing what you're doing. But first, we're going to do one more thing, because I have something special for you. Again, I usually do this later, but I want you to be able to celebrate with me. So you've written a book. Can you hold it up there for us? I'm going to full screen you. And just read the title out loud as you hold it up.
Be a happy leader, stop feeling overwhelmed, thrive personally, and achieve killer business results.
All right. Everybody see the little eyebrows and the smile. Can you overlay that on her face? It's like you posed for that picture, right? All right. So I have a surprise for you here. We're going to put it on the screen. Everyone, I would recommend you get this book, you read it, and it should be on your reference list to refer to. Also, authors get known by the reviews we write. So I'm asking you to write a review on Amazon, Goodreads.com. Speaking from experience, I did it. I not only read your book, but I didn't realize I bought the audio book. I didn't know you had it. And so I'm going to reveal your first international, or not your first, but you got many, an international review for your book. So here we go. We're going to put it up. I'm just going to take a look at it. There it is. All right. So 5-star review. Author Graham does masterful narration of her own audiobook, well-researched, I can't read behind my own logo there, and realistic body of work for business. The difference between knowledge and wisdom is time. Graham brings her lifetime of applied leadership skills into the stories she tells, making them timeless nuggets of wisdom. The content is well structured with working exercises and reference materials for retention. I like the blend of psychology and organizational neuroscience as it relates to business leadership. The unintended surprise was the voice of the wisdom left in my mind in the form of the author's happy voice. So there you have it.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think it's fireworks time. So
yes.
Well done.
It. Thank you.
All right. And now that we've done that, and I'm going to talk for another 30 seconds, and then we're going to get into turn it to you because this is about you. Everybody, when I asked Tia to come on the show, I said, okay. I said, I love your book. I love all the success, but come on, tell me the story behind that, because we know leaders who do things like this, there's usually a turning point. I call it the
Mhm.
hero's journey, where maybe there's some unfortunate adversity that happens in life. And this is what Tia wrote to me. I'm reading it to you here. Uh, my childhood also had trauma and huge challenges, including alcoholism and physical abuse. I love how you share your painful points and failures behind success, Tom. Like yours, my life has been full of ups and downs. I was extremely stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, angry, fearful, and full of mom and working guilt when I went back to work as a hotel executive in LA after having my second daughter. I was crying myself to sleep about 5 nights a week. I felt stuck. I was scared that I would not be that happy person anymore. And at this pivotal point was where I started to research happiness and eventually launch my company, Arrive at Happy.
Mhm.
Wow. And so that's classic hero's journey, everybody. Hero's journey is when we go from the known world into the unknown world and seek and come back a maven or a guide. And you're talking to somebody now and listening to them who has done this. So I'm so proud of you. Let's get into your story. So, okay, before we get in the book, go back to that early part of your life. Tell us a bit about that. And what really woke you up and led you to saying, I've had enough of this uh, to get to here?
Yes. So, and you're talking about the piece when I was crying myself to sleep five
Yeah.
nights a night, right? That point. Yes. So before becoming a parent, and for me, this was a big life change event, as it is for many, but doesn't have to be, that for you. But for me, I had always been I said I was a happy workaholic, and you might relate to this. I know from your
Oh,
background
yeah.
and how successful and hardworking you were. Yeah, I always worked so hard, and I loved working in the hotel industry. And I didn't realize how glued, I want to say wrapped together, but it's more than that, glued I was to this identity of I'm a director of sales and marketing. I've been saying that for 14 years. I am a director of sales and marketing. That's what we say. We say our name and what we do. And so the thought of not doing that, even though it wasn't working at the time for me, but the thought of changing, I felt like I had built up this, just my relationships and the credibility and all of my work success and everything. And so, although I was so unhappy now with a toddler and a baby and this big career and all this, very, very busy life in Los Angeles, the thought of not of leaving my corporate career was terrifying to me. Even though I was so unhappy trying to juggle it all, attempting to have it all, and I thought, what do I have to be unhappy about? I got great job, great husband, kids, nice apartment in Los Angeles. I should be grateful for all of this. Why are you? And I was mad at myself for being unhappy, actually, which a lot of people do. And so, but as time went on, the pain of stress and overwhelm and anxiety and fear and so much guilt. I mean, guilt was eating me alive.
Yeah.
The mom guilt, and also, I didn't feel like I was being the best executive because I didn't work as much. So that was I would say, the most painful emotion. And then of course it was sadness, as at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah.
and
I
and
mean,
I
I just
really
want to,
just felt stuck, so stuck.
yeah, it's amazing. I just want to riff on that and jump in. First of all, honoring your courage to share that part of your story. I want to flip the narrative and riff with you on it, because what's funny, what you said triggered this in my head, that when for 7 years, I was in a high leader position in a company, which
Mhm.
the company was based here and I led the company, but the board of directors was in Baltimore, Maryland. And
Okay.
it was like an 8 billion insurance company. I had people everywhere that I had. And my daughter was born, and I always used to say this, I was a frequent flyer, not a frequent father. And yet men are taught not to complain, to be tough. But I felt the same way you're talking about now. That's why I'm connecting to your story. I felt guilt
Mhm.
all the time, and I was buying my daughter toys and stuff, but it was
Yeah.
eating me inside. And uh, you know, I'm an advocate for mental health, and we'll get into your book in a bit because you talk about some really cool things in there about the brain and neuroscience. I was taught through my therapy that guilt can turn, there's guilt and uh, uh, disappointment, guilt. They're
Yeah.
kind of side by side, but guilt can lead down to a bad path of depression and things like
Yeah.
that. So amazing to me. I wrote down this thing on my paper here as I was reading your bio, is that when is enough enough? So this is my other point, and then I'll give it back to you. I did a public talk and I said I was a self-worth chaser, not a success chaser. But I was doing that in my own career, climbing the corporate ladder, getting success, and I was actually trying to fulfill a hole in my soul that was there from just an early part of my life, unresolved trauma.
Right.
You mentioned alcoholism and physical abuse. You don't have to get into the details of that, but I think this is one of the things I want to put as a theme in your talk, that you've written this book on happiness,
Mhm.
but there's people all over the world in leadership roles that come from that kind of a background, and
Mhm.
they're having trouble in the workplace with relationships and all of that kind of stuff. So let's get back into the story. So excited about what you're telling us. So there you were, and you had this crying to sleep for this despair and all this.
Yes.
What was the moment, if you can take us into the moment that you said, I'm going to do something about this? How did you discover that, and what did you start doing?
Yes. So I remember calling one of my friends who I used to work with in Manhattan, and she was still there. And I picked up the phone, and I think I was crying to her. I definitely had tears in my eyes. And I remember saying to her, I'm failing. I'm failing. I'm failing as a wife. I'm failing as a mom. I'm failing as an executive. I'm failing myself. I'm failing. And she listened and, of course, being a good friend, said, You're not failing. You are a busy, busy working person with two little kids. You have a lot going on right now. And she said, I think you need to talk to my coach, my life coach. And to be honest, Tom, I know this is very, very popular. I literally said to her, What's a life coach? Because I didn't know. It wasn't very popular. I'd never heard anyone in the hotel industry talk about it. And I certainly hadn't heard any of my friends talk about having a coach. And so she said, just call her. And I was very skeptical. I was like, okay, sure. And when I had that conversation with the coach, that first conversation, and she asked me, what do you want? How do you want to feel? And, it's just this voice on the other end of the phone. I didn't
Yeah.
see her. I'd never met her before. And I spoke from the bottom of my heart, from my soul. And I was saying, not what was wrong, what was going on, but how I wasn't super clear, but what I wanted. And saying that out loud, we talked for 60 minutes, actually saying what I really truly wanted and how I wanted to feel. It was like this tiny, I'm picturing the movie with Alice in Wonderland, like this tiny little door of hope. So that was actually the first step that I actually said to I was very authentic and I was vulnerable. And I said to another human being out loud what I wanted. And I hadn't done that before. And that was the little opening
Wow.
of
Yeah.
open possibility.
Yeah, sometimes, first of all, you're right. I remember when I was first introduced to the topic of coaching, and by the way, in senior levels of leadership, some ego-based leaders don't want coaches
Mhm.
because they have to look in the mirror and be given feedback and be held accountable. But
Right.
but what you're teaching us is that sometimes you need somebody else who can look at and get the best out of you, which is remarkable to me. My father died in January 18 from an unexpected heart attack, but he was 22 years with AA. So I grew
Mhm.
up in a toxic home with an alcoholic dad who's
Mhm.
also a commanding officer in the military. So talking about learning the wrong way to be a leader. You
Right.
mentioned alcoholism. Was that in your family? Was it
Yes.
parental or
Yes. Yes. Parent, grandparents.
wow?
It was around, I even want to say, family, friends. But yes, definitely. Yeah, with one parent and then grandparents for sure.
Yeah. Did you find that drove you to prove yourself?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah, it was a huge catalyst. I am a recovering perfectionist for sure. And that's a I also, so yes, proving myself, being successful, making a name for myself. And it also, something that it drove me to do was force me to be as independent. And I actually, was early on, and, I am married now. I've been married actually 10 years, but those childhood experiences had me want to be super independent, and so that no one could hurt me, no one could affect me. That, I for many years I had this quite thick wall around me.
Yeah.
um from a relationship standpoint, of just like, nope, no one's going to be able to
Yeah.
hurt me or
Yeah.
negatively affect me. I'm going to create my own perfect, obviously it's false world, right? You can't do that.
That's
But
right.
that was also another effect.
Yeah, I mean, I can say the same thing, friend. There's millions of us out there. I called it armor, and
Yes.
having the armor on. And I think the other thought that came in mind when you were talking about the guilt and I wouldn't use the word shame because you didn't use it, but the guilt
No,
of,
no, shame was there. I was thinking
yeah,
shame too, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I meant to say from my therapy. I learned brain therapy that guilt, if you're guilty about something, like I missed your birthday party, a healthy person will pick up the phone and say, "Hey, sorry, let's go out for ice cream and, and celebrate."
Oh my
But
God.
somebody
Yeah.
who's a shameful person could slip into depression. And
Yeah.
so it's very dangerous. And I have this thought that continues in my head that we're not who we really think we are. We'll talk about that, some of the things in your book related to brain science, but I don't think a lot of people really understand that. At least my dad didn't. That when you're drunk and you've got children up to the age of about 15 or so, their brain logs everything in as truth.
Yeah.
So what I thought of myself, and I'm not projecting, but you're amazing. But I think we just think we're somebody else because it was put in our heads until
Mhm.
we find a book like yours that teaches us how to unravel that and
Mhm.
see the true happiness. So let's get into the book. Hold it up again. We want to brag about it and get you to talk about it. There it is. I'm just going to read something again off my paper here. Uh, Her new book, Be a Happy Leader, teaches her proprietary, I love this because you created the IP behind it, 8-step methodology on driving productivity and business growth through a culture of happiness. That is just freaking amazing, especially where I come from. I know we don't have time to go through all 8, but
Yeah.
this is your show. So get into a few of those principles, and let's start with the one that basically we just talked about, how, if your brain is wired the wrong way with looking for sadness and what's wrong instead of joy and happiness, as if you're a leader. So
Yes.
take us through that process. What do you want to tell us?
Sure. So, yes, there's an 8-step methodology that combines my experience plus all of the happiness and neuroscience research and happiness at work research that I've done. But the first step, and you can't go anywhere, you can't move on without this one and continuously focus on this one, is called Start With You. So in this step, my goal is to inspire and then teach people how to, number one, always remember that a huge part of our happiness is based on our choices, choosing to be happy and make it a priority. And then also choosing to make choices every single day that increase your well-being and increase your happiness. So happiness is partly genetic, but a lot of it is your choices. And so I talk about the research and the connection between healthy food and happiness, exercise, sleep, meditation. But I go on to talk about things such as living with awe, with gratitude, human connection, and also to have leaders realize that you never ever want to push off or delay your happiness. Like, when I get to be VP, then I'll be happy. When I,
Yeah.
you know, then I will. It's the research shows that when you prioritize your own happiness, you will be more successful. There was just a massive meta study done in the military, a 5-year study of over 1 million people, and it showed that the happier people in the military not only got more awards, but were more successful in their career. So it's about,
Yeah.
don't delay it, it's
uh,
now. Now is the time.
Everybody, it's a teaching moment. So there's a nugget there that Tia gave us. Don't delay your happiness. And it's so, I want you, when you take it back, to explain what neuroscience means. so our audience understands it. But there is just like, I've learned in my own research that you can have a negative and positive thought at the same time. It's like, duh, if you're happy, you can create happiness, solutions, positivity. But I also learned something about the way our brain is created. We actually default to not positive. So maybe you can
Yeah,
talk a
negativity
bit.
bias.
Yeah,
Yes.
tell us a bit about that, and then one of the other principles that is in the book.
Sure, sure. So that our brain is designed to allow us to, of course, procreate, wants to keep us alive, and it wants to keep us safe.
Yeah,
So we are always looking for things that could harm us, hurt us. And, in English, we say the negative, right? If you think about the news, and there's all of these different aspects of our world that is reinforcing that negativity bias. And so just understanding that is really, really valuable. Understanding that some people are genetically predisposed to be more negative or more positive. Genetics does play a part, but then your choices really come into play. And so I say that, you would never, ever think that if you went to the gym for a month and had really healthy food for a month, that you would, and let's say you did yoga, so you're, limber, that you're going to be healthy for the other 11 months of the year, right? No one would ever, it's like, you need to
yeah,
continuously work at it. So your happiness and your well-being is exactly the same. It's not something that you do and then, you can coast. Maybe a vacation will give that. You'll be on a high for a few weeks, but then you're back to your, day in, day out life. And so I really see happiness as, yes, it's thought, but it's action. It's really
yeah,
action. And a key piece of what I teach in the science of happiness is that having a healthy relationship with the painful aspects of your life, with those painful emotions, is vital, because there's no such thing as being happy all the time. Life is going to knock you down, right? And we were
yeah,
talking before we went live about the parenting challenges that I'm going through right now. Life is going to continue to have peaks and valleys. And so a
yeah.
happy leader is also one that has healthy ways to deal with, work through when life is really, really challenging.
Yeah, it's another teaching moment there. Life is full of ups and downs. I wrote something in my paper here before we did this about life's like a movie. It's a moving picture.
Yeah.
And I even say this to people about, and I like your opinion on mental illness and mental health in the workplace. I even say this to people, that it's not a matter of if, but it's when you'll experience mental illness, because our brains were only built to take so much pressure and stress. And if we don't have a T as a coach or a book that teaches us how to take care of our brain. And I love what you said about eating healthy. Uh, you know, I just have to go back to some of the people I meet in business and, what did you have for breakfast? Well, you know the answer. And, the scotch and the alcohol late at night, and can't not self-deprivation, sleep and all that. It's like, how's that taking care of your brain? Your brain's going to shrink. It's, you're going to be up all night. You're feeding sugar.
Irritable, grumpy. Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy. But you know what? I think I got to say this, the world's changed. I mean, I was going to ask you about paradigm shift. Do you think that, like, you wrote this book in an interesting time in the world? When I was a leader, we didn't have COVID-19, we didn't have isolation. The whole business models are shifting,
Yes.
and now, and then all your employees are coming to work, but they're stressed because they've got isolation. They're at home. There's strife with their kids.
Yeah.
So, talk about that in the book and any of the principles. Now you're a leader in a world where you're a virtual leader, or you're dealing with a whole new paradigm shift. Any
Yeah.
wisdom you can give on that from your book?
Yeah. So in addition to the challenges, I think that COVID for the world of work and for people working is a huge blessing. This is a big silver lining. It fast tracked where we were going. And people today have a different mindset, right? The great reset, and they're expecting, they want a higher level of well-being. And companies are a part of that. And so, yeah, I wrote this book in March, April, and May of 2020, never thinking that it would be right when there was a lot of unhappiness and, of course, challenges to mental health at all levels. But for leaders, whether you have virtual, hybrid, or in person, it's an opportunity for people to shift the way that they lead and to create environments, virtual and in person, where people can flourish and really realize their full potential. And
Yeah.
so, I know that there's a lot that want to go back, like, oh, I just wanted to be the way that was. Well, it's not, and whether it's younger generations, they're demanding different
Yes.
things. So when I speak to leaders, I say this is an opportunity to reset. If you weren't taking care of yourself, this is a time to do that, and starting with you. And then also to really understand what you can do to allow people to realize their full potential. And the brain works differently when we are positive than if we are really neutral or stressed. You want people operating in their prefrontal cortex. You want that executive functioning. And the world of work is changing so fast. There's research that shows the connection between positivity and innovation and creativity, which every business is changing really fast now. So I just am saying, use it as an opportunity and really learn what, different individuals on your team want, and change the world of work for the better.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just want to say to our audience again that when you look at the depth of Tia's background, what I like about the work you're doing is, you can stand in front of a room and coach or teach people, but you have practical applied experience in the workforce. So in the book, you tell stories about your experience, and it makes you relatable. And I think that's really cool. You're not just a consultant, but you're somebody who's actually walked and experienced things. You also talk about ups and downs and challenges in your leadership in the book, which I think is vital. And this leads to one of my pet peeves about a lot of leaders that I was developed by, which is the inability to understand vulnerabilities as strength. And guys, get over it. You were told by your dads probably, don't cry, be tough. But you've got to be able to take risks and be vulnerable, right? And so I'm a big proponent of personality science and understanding why people do what they do, their characters. In the work I do, I think the statistic is people leave jobs because of their managers, not because of money or things like that, right? And you
Yes,
talk about
absolutely.
Maslow. You talk about some of those principles in your book. If you have a toxic boss, and God says love all people, we know they're broken. Like, what's your advice to people who you can't change them? You can only focus on what you're teaching. Show up happy, show up yourself. Don't wait for the pat on the back from the boss. But if you really have a bad situation, what do you advise from your principles?
Yeah, and I've had them. I have had toxic. That's one of the motivators for the book, because I've been there. There's a few people coming to
Me
mind
too.
right now.
Yeah.
Yes. So the first is don't underestimate your circle of influence, right? Maybe you might not be the top person. You can't create the whole culture, but you influence your peers, the people that might work, at different levels of the organization. So that's one, is you have a ripple effect. We all do. And think about the energy that you want to bring, the relational energy that you want to bring to the workplace. And so that was one thing that I did, is I realized that there were things I couldn't change. There were people I couldn't change, but I knew I could positively affect these people around me, these people that worked for me. And so that's what I was going to do. And then also a big lesson is to not take things personally. And this is really hard, especially early on in your career.
I think I still have work to do on that one for sure.
Yes, absolutely. When I remember an owner of a hotel or a boss would be doing things, saying different, comments to me, etc. And I would pause and in my mind say, it's not me.
Yeah.
This is them. It's not me. And, people ask me all the time about toxic coworkers and toxic bosses. And I say, try and remember this, that happy people don't hurt people. So they're hurting on the inside. So
yeah,
in a way, it's actually be compassionate for them. You're not gonna be able to change them, but be compassionate because they're struggling, whether it be personally, professionally, or both. They're struggling, and that's why they're showing up in the world this way. And it's not you.
Well, thank you. And, I'm going to be bold and say this too, that I've had some pretty toxic bosses, but also want to be transparent with you and real because you shared your story that it was only until uh, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago doing my podcast that I actually went to video. And I talk about this openly. I'm not ashamed of it, but I've tried doing video, and what I see coming back at me, the way I look, I don't think I don't think I look good. And the reason why
Oh,
is because
great.
the reason why is growing up, about 4 of my family members, 4 of 5, I'm 5,
Yeah.
called me names and picked on me for the way I looked.
Mm,
Also being a South Asian, my parents are Fijian, I had that to deal with. So that
right.
was all wired. So when I grew up and I started getting into leadership, the other threat of it is I would sit in a room and see somebody sitting across from me who maybe raised their voice or did something, and I would be triggered, and my brain would go, "That person looks like my dad," and I would literally melt
Mm,
into an emotional puddle. And so I think this is one of the things that is really important to everyone is that when you have toxic bosses, sometimes I'd like your opinion on this, but it's like sometimes I like to say, what are you pretending not to know? There's a million companies out there. Go find a company that has a culture of happiness and joy. Go
yeah.
find your joy.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, I mean, I absolutely believe, I mean, life is short. I think a key to my happiness is I remember that I'm mortal, that every day is a blessing. You wake up, it's tomorrow's not a guarantee. And so, yes, if you are in an environment that is affecting your mental health, that is toxic, absolutely try and find, do what you can while you're there, but then work on where can I find an environment that is going to be supportive and is positive. And so, I
yeah,
absolutely agree. I think life is short. Some people don't have that opportunity always, and it might take time, but if you have that ability, yes, absolutely. And there's a
yeah.
lot of great bosses and companies out there. There's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that if people viewed me that way because I was a broken adult when I got into my career initially, if
Yeah.
people didn't give me a chance, I wouldn't have gotten to the CEO or the level of positions that I was really desiring. And I
Yeah.
think this is where one of the things that I'd like you to talk about is you consult with companies, and I read some really cool stuff about how you use your strategies to drive higher level of engagement and performance. So when you're up at the C level, that's the drivers. Okay, what's the revenue, profit? Sometimes it's public company, you got shareholders. I don't think there's enough investment in companies in getting coaching for the top leaders. Uh,
Okay.
and so I think if everybody get Tia to come in and hire and
Uh-huh.
get that, go in there, because if you can get that message at a higher level,
Mhm.
uh, that if to even boards, that if you can change the health of the leader.
Mhm.
uh, I want to say one more thing that just came to my mind. Somebody told me that there's a direct connection between the performance of a company and the blind spot of the CEO or the top
Mhm.
leaders, which really plays out in my mind is like, yeah,
Yeah.
like when in my own career, when I finally got healthy about communicating with people and resolved, my career and my company went like this.
Right.
So take us back into the book. And I I saw you do so many certifications and things, so you become a bit of a maven with all this knowledge. You have
Mhm.
a bunch of things you do. Talk about that, your services, what you offer, to
Sure.
teach and create this culture.
Yeah, so I am so passionate about leaders just because of their influence and the ripple effect, not only to the employees, but there's research that shows it affects the employees' spouses and children, right? So this is like a societal impact into communities, and it's a large company globally. So the way that I partner with organizations and support organizations to grow is through keynote talks, leadership trainings, whether it be full days or ongoing, and then consulting as well with companies. And um, we don't have time to go through all the 8 steps, but um, one I'll talk about is about this idea of being the spark. So this is a step. And there's there is a big paradigm shift happening, right? Because the way that companies and what you and I have experienced, what some people are experiencing right now, it is very authoritarian. It's very top down,
Yeah.
and it's, do what I say because I know I've been there. Look where I
Command and control
am.
leadership. Exactly. I get it.
Exactly. And really, when I went over to Denmark and got certified as a chief happiness officer for happiness at work, it was fascinating learning about how Danish CEOs run their companies, because Danish people are way happier while they're working than people in the United States and in North America. And so this
Wow.
step of Be the Spark is about being responsible for the energy that you bring and understanding the research behind positivity. There's a fantastic book called Positive Leadership by Kim Cameron. And when leaders look at the way that they're communicating in emails, over Slack, in meetings, phone calls, that the way that they communicate has a direct connection to how the business performs. We were talking about
Yeah.
revenues and
Yeah.
profit. And
Totally.
there is so many challenges in the world today, obviously with the war, with pandemic, with the economy, that not being fake at all, but leaders need to be optimistic and need to communicate optimism, because people are desperate for hope and for
Oh
light
yeah.
now. And so that leadership piece as well. So that's what I talk about in Be the Spark. And one step that I love and I get asked about a lot is this step called prioritize relationships over to-do lists. A lot of
Ah,
leaders that I work with, they say, Tia, I would love to spend time with my team. I would love to do regular one-on-ones. I would love to fill in, but they say, but I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And so I'm too busy to spend time with my team. And what I teach them is, and there's research that does it, is if you prioritize those one-on-one relationships and then also that team as a whole, your number one priority, your results will increase and your to-do list will shrink. Even though you feel
absolutely.
like you don't have time, if you make the time, you will get, tenfold out of them. So that's another.
I got to jump in and you get me excited on this one. There's a few stories. I'm dealing with some people now that
Yeah.
actually did some time management training, and this is an industry where these are young guys who've come up and they're now in leadership roles, like
Yeah.
senior management, middle management, and I did some one-to-one work with them, and most of them didn't know how to use a day planner. Most of them had never been trained on their skills, and that getting things done through other people is kind of your job. And
Mhm.
so it's such an awesome thing you said, because when I became a high level leader, I was told by my coach, calendar everything. So
Yes.
dates with my wife, daughter's this, soccer game, whatever. And so today, I think that paradigm's shifting. But what you said happened to me when I started prioritizing and learning how to lead through others, getting them to follow me. All of a sudden, I went, I don't have a time problem anymore, right? I'm learning to actually, lead differently. I love that part about what you said and the principles in your book. Tell me about Denmark again, certification. Is that something that, like, how did you find that, and what did that?
Yes. So, as I was researching happiness, both, personal happiness, so positive psychology and the neuroscience piece, and then also happiness at work, because we spend so much time working. It's such a huge part of our lives. So I was at the same time researching both of those. And I found this entrepreneur in Copenhagen who had a happiness company, still has it, and it's called Woohoo Inc. And
I love it.
so yeah, Scandinavia is light years ahead of us in terms of happiness at work.
Yeah.
He's had his company for 2 decades, and works with companies all over the world of how do you increase the happiness of the team members. And so I, connected with him on LinkedIn, and I saw him announcing, that they were doing certifications for chief happiness officers. So I thought, oh my gosh, especially because on the World Happiness Report every year, Denmark
Mhm.
always comes out in the top 3. So I was like, what a great place to go and learn about happiness at
Yeah.
work. And so I went over there and spent a week. There was 24 of us from 18 countries, and we spent a week learning from Alexander and his team, and then also from CEOs in Denmark about how to increase experienced happiness while working, which is an emotional experience, how to have more of the emotions such as joy, excitement, connection, understanding, as opposed, and less of the stress, fear, anger, And if you can have more of that's experienced happiness while working day in, day out, how
Yeah.
you feel, that's what drives, motivation and less turnover and productivity and more sales and higher customer satisfaction, you name
Yeah.
it. So that's really, I spent the week and came back with so
I
much
think it's,
knowledge.
yeah, I just want to honor you and commend you for that. It's fascinating. I read that, listened to that in the book, and I went, wow, never heard of that before. But there's a nugget. Get your top leaders to get some development like that. There's a saying that people use sometimes. It's like, if you love yourself first, or if you wake up loving yourself, then you can be around and love other people, lead other people. This is a really hard one, because if you have all that unresolved, or that wiring where your brain goes to look at negative thoughts first, it's really
Yeah,
hard to get there. And
yeah.
just thinking about this whole thing about women in leadership too, I have a
Mhm,
very big bias. It's a positive bias for women. And in some of the work I've done, even on boards, I've been a proponent. Unfortunately, I grew up with a command and control father, uh, and then in a workplace where I had some of these old school bosses. But man, it was a man's world.
mhm,
One thing I think women do much better is, there's two words: transactional and transformational leadership. I use those words. Transactional leadership is like, men are good at it. It's like, Tia, I need you to do this, and if you do it, here's your reward. You get to keep your job, or you get your paycheck. Whereas women can use emotion. They can connect to the heart of people using that empathic response, that emotion, and
mhm,
get me to feel like what I'm doing is beyond just the paycheck. It's connected to something bigger. And I think I've seen, even in some work I do, being around other women leaders, there's gifts there. And I kind of want to shake some of the men out there and say, you know what, you got to have more women in leadership. You got to pay them the same way,
mhm.
because
Yes, thank you.
because I think that's the way to the future. Honestly, is to
It
be able to
is.
have, emotion is the way of the heart, and that's the pathway to change. That's what
Emotion
I,
is what drives behavior, right? And we
yeah,
need to the world desperately needs humans to do what they have never done before, whether it be growing the economy to, for people, as well as what's happening with the environment and technology, AI. I mean, the world is calling us to be at working at levels that we never have before. And in order to solve the problems and to grow companies, provide income, help families, etc.,
yeah.
we need people's brains to be working optimally. We really, really
Yeah,
do.
exactly. Yeah, and I think you're hitting on all the right points there. At teaching moment, everybody, get your brain to work optimally. Get
Yes.
Tia's book. Hold it up again, Tia, so we can give a bit of a shameless plug there. Be a happy leader. Everybody, I want you to get the book. Authors get known, and their gifts help others by writing reviews. So read it, post a review on Amazon, and tell other people about it. I've read it. I've done a review on it. This is really important. I think it's a timeless book. I want to ask you two more questions, and then we'll move to sort of the wrap up here. And that is about um, mental mental illness. So
Mhm.
what would you do to, what's one thing you would do to, if you're on a mission to lift the stigma of mental illness in the workplace?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is sh- being vulnerable, having leaders be vulnerable and talk about their challenges, because then it makes it a safe conversation, right? Because the leaders are who set the example. And then also, I would talk about resources for getting help, whether that be, talking about the power of therapy. You mentioned that. And I've worked with therapists before, talking about that and, and having it, I don't know, just what comes to mind is just having it be common
Yeah.
language
Yeah.
and not anything to be shunned or embarrassed about, but talk about it as this is a part of the human experience. And
Yeah.
depending on
Thank
what's
you.
going on, that
Yeah.
yeah. And don't
Yeah.
try and go
Thank
at it alone.
Oh, absolutely. Spoke teaching moment again, everybody. I mean, part of the experience. In one of a public talk I did in 2020, I said make physical and mental health one, and I think so.
Yes.
I've been really working on something, and I'm glad we're connected for life now because there's some things we can collaborate on. But I'm starting to realize, because of the way the brain works, words matter, and we associate things with the words mental illness. But if you flip the narrative and you start, and I started, I've been just teaching and talking about brain health, and
Yes.
in using neuroscience and helping people know how their brain has thoughts, how thinking patterns work, neuroplasticity, you can
Yes.
actually kind of invade that subject of mental illness, and you can come about to it in a talk about brain health. What happens when you get addicted to sugar and dopamine levels go haywire? What happens when this happens? Serotonin, these things in the brain that might lead to depression, that might lead to this, and then
Right.
you become preventive about it. But you get people talking about the largest, one of the most important organs in the body, the brain,
Yes.
which we don't really teach. And so I'm excited about that. And in Tia's book, everybody, there's a lot about the concepts of brain health and brain science. So good
Yeah.
job on that, because not every coach or author really dives into that.
No, when I learned from when I was studying positive psychology and learned about, adult neuroplasticity and the neurogenesis and how
Yeah.
you can change your brain, I remember thinking, everyone needs to know about this. I wish I learned about this way earlier in my life. And, when you were talking about of saying mental illness, to me, and maybe this is my happiness perspective is of like, it's life. It's not depending on what's happening to you, depending on what you know. And I truly believe that humans do the best they can with what they know and what they've experienced until they learn something different, right?
Yeah.
And so giving people resources and talking about it, but um, mental well-being, our emotional well-being
Yeah.
is our life experience,
Yeah.
So
I think you're right about its life, and that's why I said I found a new narrative on it, because when you start, like for example, there's why can we easily talk about the heart muscle and talk about this is what happens when you eat saturated fats, your arteries don't
yes,
vasodilate,
you're
they can clog.
comfortable with it, right?
So,
Yes.
so, so you scare the crap about at people, and you say, "Here's what you do as you're younger, growing up, to keep your heart healthy." We can talk about that, but we can't talk about this is what could happen with your brain, and it could lead to this thing called depression or
Right.
anxiety. So, here's what you do to prevent that. Here's what you do to know what it looks like. So, I
Yeah.
think if we flip the narrative on it, I think we can make a dent in it. The
Yes.
last question was really around. Something about this topic of happiness. You have a good balance in your book about being real and authentic. And so I want to say some things here. It's not meant to be critical of you, but I had a guest on my show months ago. She happens to be a CEO of a company. No, sorry, what I don't remember, but she was at a higher level of leadership, and
Okay.
she did write a book, and she struggled in her career. And she said one of the things that happened, and it actually what triggered her looking for a way out of her pain, was uh, the death of her husband.
Mm.
And she had a young daughter, and she found out that, and especially through work, she had a blind spot that she couldn't express empathy. She
Mhm.
couldn't she had to be happy, 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 and she had armor on, and she basically deflected. So even when her husband died, she said her own daughter was trying to talk to her, and her daughter was like 6 years old,
Yeah.
was talking more about the daddy, and she wasn't able to. So this is one of the things I want people to get your book, and why they need to read it is it's not about going to work and being happy, happy, happy and being unreal. But if in a conversation like we're having here, you've done it very well several times, where I tell you something like, I don't think I look very good, and you pause and you say, that must have been hard for you. You
Mhm.
give me an empathic response. All of a
Mhm.
sudden I think, wow, she's real, she cares. Maybe you share a story that, there's one time in your life you had that experience.
Mhm.
I think leaders don't do that enough,
Mhm.
especially at higher levels, because I'm there. They don't. You'll never see an old school leader say, "Hey, can we stop this meeting? Is anybody here feeling stressed? Because I really am. There's a lot going on."
Yeah, right. How powerful
Drop
just that
drop your
simple comment.
shoulders. Yeah. And then what happens is the empathic somebody puts up their hand and says, I'm glad you said that, because
I'm stressed too.
yeah. So
Yes.
I'm so excited about your book, and everybody, we're going to wrap up on this and ask Tia, tell us how people can get a hold of you and your body of work.
Sure. So everything about my company and my work is on my website, arriveathappy.com. And then also I'm very active on LinkedIn. So that's another place for starting conversations, but those are the two main places.
Okay, great. And then I have one more surprise for you. You might know about this if you
Oh,
listen to my shows, but you're getting an award today. So I'm going to full screen me for a minute. And you might think that's odd, but you'll understand why. Behind me, there is an image, and that actually, I'm standing in the way of it. I'm going to bring you back here. That's called a challenge coin. And you probably know about these because we're connected to a common
yeah.
author, but challenge
Yeah.
coins, World War II, they were used to create community. And when I created this show, it was really like, I don't even know what a podcast is. I just want to have people come tell stories and really be real, not cover up with ego. So I created this. The front of it is the show, handcrafted paint. The back is actually the hero's journey narrative, beautifully illustrated. So you're
Mhm.
going to get this, and you're inducted into the Quiet Warrior tribe. We now have Quiet Warriors in 17 countries, and less than
Amazing.
50 of these a year go out. And you know me, because I challenge you. I don't let everybody come on the show, because
Mhm.
leaders who can't be authentic and tell their stories, right? So welcome to the tribe. You're now
Thank
Quiet
you.
Warrior.
Thank you. I'm
You'll
so
be
excited
getting,
to be part of it.
and I'm more excited because the postage on it to you is going to be less because you're actually in Toronto, BC.
Exactly.
And the last part is I'm going to honor you with 4 words. I call these leadership words. I don't script them. I write them as the guest is speaking. The first one is happy. I mean, you're a picture of what that looks like. And you have this, I think you know this, but you have this authentic smile. It's always on you, even when and it just inspires me because I don't smile that well. I'm a serious guy. Love comes out of you in many different ways. I think you connect to people's heart. I'm going to give you the word maven because if you read the book or know the book Outliers, if you say, hey, who do I know who is an expert on creating a happy culture? This lady's done enough research, got enough certifications, applied enough of this through her own development, everybody, that I'll think of you. You're a maven. And the last one is I'm just going to say real. You're
Mm,
real because you share, and I know every day for you, just like me, we wake up and we experience pain because our brains want to go back to those thoughts. You
mm,
have things developing in your life, and you know how to get up and inspire other people. Uh, but you've done a lot of work daily navigating your own pain. And so
mm.
for that, you're a true quiet warrior. And I just say thank you.
Aw, thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we'll definitely follow your journey. We're connected for life. We'll have you back again and talk about some other topics. Everybody get the book and enjoy it and get a hold of Tia. So thanks for being on my show.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. So just hold on. I'm just going to put my we're going to do some editing to make sure I do this right, but I'll put my little thing on here. Stay on the line.